Okay, we continue our series on Stoicism, where we go through the Enchiridion and the translation How to Be Free by Professor A.A. Long. And we had ended up at one of the somewhat longer chapters, chapter 48. The stance and hallmark of ordinary persons is never looking for help or harm from themselves, but only from things that are on the outside. The stance and hallmark of philosophers is only looking for help and harm from themselves. The signs of a person making progress are these: criticizing nobody, praising nobody, blaming nobody, accusing nobody, and saying nothing about oneself to indicate being someone or knowing something. Whenever such a person is frustrated or impeded, he accuses himself. If he's complimented, he laughs to himself at the one paying the compliment. And if he's criticized, he doesn't defend himself. He goes around like a patient, taking care not to injure any of his recovering limbs before they are fully firm. He has banished all desire, and he has transferred his aversion to the naturally disagreeable things that are up to us. He is relaxed in all his motivations. He doesn't care if he appears simple-minded or ignorant. In a word, he keeps watch on himself as though he were his own enemy, plotting an attack. That last sentence is beautiful and something we need to get back to. So, I think there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, I think we can all agree that this is a magnificent sweater. But beyond that, what's going on here is that I think Epictetus is telling us that making progress, right, prokopsis, as we've talked about before, one of the very important aspects of Stoicism, is not necessarily to be perfect, because nobody is. Only the Stoic sage is perfect. But you can try to sort of model yourself after a sage, and you can try doing that by making progress. And progress in itself can be enough, as long as you are consistent in making that progress. So making progress is displayed by a number of changes in attitudes, and Epictetus mentions a couple here. There is not blaming others, and not to enjoy compliments, which is an interesting one, and not to defend oneself when criticized. That is for sure one I struggle with. I thought I'd say it before you did, because you'd be absolutely right. I do struggle with that, and some days it's easier than other days, but that is something where I really try to make progress. And I have made a lot of progress, I can honestly say that. I also know that I still have much progress to make. But that's the whole point. That is one of the reasons I am pursuing Stoicism, why I am learning about this, why I am trying to apply this, right? But anyway, this is not about me. So not blaming others, well, I think we can all agree that that is often a good idea, especially when, of course, it is not warranted. But even if it is warranted, in what way do you improve your situation by blaming others, right? It doesn't help. And some of the greatest leaders I have worked with, the pattern I noticed in them was that they didn't put blame on anyone. They just said things like, well, you may have made a mistake in this, but you know this is really difficult. Which is not a matter of allowing someone to save face, but what's the point in saying, well, you made this mistake and it was incredibly stupid of you? Right? Nobody benefits from that, and it only makes people nervous and makes them prone to make more mistakes. So there is that. Not enjoying compliments is an interesting one. Why would Epictetus say that? Well, when you think about it, compliments very easily turn into flattery, and flattery is not a virtuous thing. So that wouldn't really help you much. It wouldn't also really get you anywhere, I think. And when you think about it, and we have talked about this before, because I remember there was another chapter on something similar. What do you benefit from a compliment? If someone pays you a compliment, of course, they could be absolutely sincere, and that's wonderful. But very often in our world, people give you a compliment because they're looking for something. They're trying to get something out of you, and that is why they compliment you, in my mind. So, and there is the whole issue of whether a compliment even is sincere to begin with. If someone is feeling bad and you say, yeah, well, it's not your fault, well, it may damn well be their fault. right? And then that almost turns into sort of a compliment of, yeah, but don't worry, it's not you, right? So be careful of that, and ask yourself what it would really mean to you if someone gives you a compliment. Is it something you really need? If you've done something well, you know you've done it well. And this kind of ties into Marcus Aurelius. If you do something well, then that's enough. I'm definitely paraphrasing here, but do something well because you do want to do something well, not because you want to do something well and be complimented for it. Then you are not doing this from a virtuous perspective. You're doing this because you're fishing for compliments. And as I said, the criticizing stuff, yeah, that's definitely something I struggle with, and I try to keep working on, and that is hard too. But indeed, if you were to be a perfect sage, you would be completely unaffected by anyone criticizing you. Well, I think a lot of us struggle with that, and some people take criticism incredibly well, and I will admit to a certain envy in that regard. So I think something to take away from this is you look at yourself and you use the setbacks in life to see where you can improve yourself and how you can make yourself a better person. And as I said, every time criticism upsets me, I am confronted with the reality that I'm far from where I want to be in that regard, right? Whether criticism is fair or not doesn't really matter. I would really love to be able to see someone's criticism of me and just shrug it off and continue with my day. And there are days where I can do that, and there are days where I cannot, right? So you can use every day as an opportunity to see where, as a Stoic, because that's what this whole series of videos is about, what you can do as a Stoic to improve yourself, to become a better person. Or I should say maybe an even better person, right? It's because I'm not suggesting you're not a good person, but what areas can you work on? What areas can you improve yourself on? And I think that's an important point. So another thing that is quite interesting, he says, is that all desire is banished, and that too is something that we have talked about before, and I think is a very important point. Desire is something that is very common in our world, and we have access to all kinds of things to satisfy desires in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of possible meanings. But remember, desire is almost a surefire way to be disappointed in yourself or in others or in the world, because very often we desire those things that are not within our control. And this comes back to the very first chapter in the Enchiridion. Remember that some things are within your control and other things are not. Becoming an incredibly successful business person and making $1 million may be a very nice goal you have, but it's not entirely within your control. It's also not to say that it's not within your control, but it's not entirely within your control. So when you make your happiness conditional upon something like that, something that is not within your control and not entirely within your control, you cannot create your own happiness. Because until you get that thing, which you are not in control of, you will be unhappy. But by definition, that is how that works. So to banish all desire, that would ensure that you never desire something that might not be within your control. And as a result, you banish that source of unhappiness from your life, right? I'm reminded again of something that we already talked about, an earlier quote from Epictetus, or an earlier chapter, that I always think is an incredibly powerful saying, where he said, "Do not ask for things to be as you wish them to be, but wish for things to be as they truly are, and you will be all right." Right? That deals with that desire. If you accept things as they are, and even want them to be just the way they are, as opposed to wishing for things to be as something that is not within your control, well then, you will suffer less if you can accept reality as it is, right? I think the absolute beauty of this chapter lies in that final sentence. In a word, he keeps watch on himself as though he were his own enemy, plotting an attack, Now I can come up with a number of interpretations for that specific sentence, but I like to look at it this way. We all are our own worst enemies. When you look at this from a viewpoint of Stoic ethics, we all do things wrong. We all do those things that make us unhappy. So if you look at yourself as your own enemy, then you can look at yourself as, if I do /say /think /desire /whatever, this thing, object, action, whatever, am I going to make myself unhappy? If I respond to this criticism, will I in the long run be unhappy? If I respond to this person giving me a compliment who is actually quite blatantly flattering me, will I get into trouble? If I accept this compliment and I feel good about myself, even though there is no real reason to feel that good about myself because all I've done is my duty, this again is a very, very Marcus Aurelius type way of thinking, I just have to do what I need to do. Take your work. Assuming that you are in, like you are hired by a company, well then you owe that company whatever it is the company wants you to do. That's what they pay you for. So if your boss then comes in and gives you a compliment and you feel good about that, then if you really want to be a hardcore Stoic, that's wrong thinking. All you are doing is your duty. Marcus Aurelius writes about this extensively. I'm just doing my duty as an emperor. I should be doing my duty, that's it. I don't need compliments. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and that's all, right? I think that's a very, very important way to look at it. So if you consider yourself your own enemy, you know your own weaknesses, you can analyze your own weaknesses. I've talked about some of mine today. Then you know what to look out for. Because you can be your own enemy. You are your own enemy plotting your own downfall by doing the wrong things that you know you are prone to doing wrong. Like, for example, being upset by criticism. Be your own enemy. And that may be a good stepping stone for you to progress. A very nice way to think about things. I hope this was useful. We are nearing the end of the Enchiridion, but I already have the follow-up planned. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it, and I'll gladly see you again next time. Bye-bye.